Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Muhammad Hatami Rahmat. I am here to bring to you guys my presentation, my midterm project presentation for the morphophonology lesson. Okay. So part one, my uh, for the first one is the derivational and inflectional morphemes. In morphology, the study of word formation, a morpheme is the smallest unit of meaning in a language. For example, in unhappiness, we can break it into three morphemes. For the first one is un as the prefix, uh, also happy as the root word, and lastly, ness as the suffix. But not all morphemes behave the same way, and that's where derivational and inflectional morphemes come in. Okay, so for the first one, derivational morphemes. This creates new words by changing the meaning or the grammatical category, part of speech, of a base word. They can be prefixes, the one that comes before the word, or suffixes, the one that comes after the root word. They change the word's meaning or word class, such as noun into from noun to adjective, and also it often creates new dictionary entries. So, an example for derivational morphemes. First one is with the root word or the base word of happy. With the added morpheme of un, the new word uh, becomes unhappy, which it changed the meaning into the negative form of happy, which is unhappy. And then for the next one is teach with the added morpheme of er or creates the new word teacher, which changes the uh, word, the root word of teach as a verb into a noun as the teacher. The next one is beauty with the added morpheme of full. Creates the new word of beautiful that changes the root word of beauty as a noun into an adjective. The next one is a possible with the added morpheme of im. Creates the new word or creates a new word that is impossible, which changes the meaning into negation or the negative. Also, the last one is the word, the root word of create with the added morpheme of eon, creates the new word of creations and changes the verb of the root word create into a noun. Okay. So, and the next one, inflectional morphemes. These don't create new words. They just show grammatical relationship like tense, number, person, or degree. They don't change the word class or such as we done before from the verb into a noun. It only changes. It's still the same word, just maybe different usage, such as maybe a past tense or a present tense. So for the example, is with the base word of cat with the added morpheme of s. It creates to a new form as in cats, which is doesn't really change the meaning. It's still a cat, but since it just changes the fact that it is now a plural with the added s because there is more than one cat as in a plural. And next word is walk with the added morpheme of ed or ed, creates the new form of walked, which is the same again, the same word, but with the change function that it became a past tense. And then the next one is run. With the added morpheme of ing, it carries the new form of running, with which is the progressive aspect of the base root, the root word of run. And the next one is big, with the added word of er, which creates the new form of bigger, which changes the function into a comparative degree. And lastly is the word fast, with the added morph of us, creates the new form of fastest, which is changing the function as a superlative. Now, how do we distinguish between the two, between the derivational morphemes and the inflectional? So I've made here a table for us so that we can easily distinguish between them. So first we gotta see if it changes if the morpheme changes the meaning. If it does, then it is a derivational. If it doesn't, then it is an inflectional. Next, we'll see if it changes the word class. Now, if it's often or most likely, in most usual case, it does, then it is a derivational. There are some very specific exceptions, but often in a normal conversation, then it usually is a derivational. If it's rarely, if it doesn't really, if it doesn't change the word class, then it is inflectional. Now, nextly, and then next, does it create a new word? If it does, derivational. If it doesn't, then it's inflectional. And then, uh, does it change the grammatical function? If it doesn't, then it's derivational. If it does, it's inflectional. So, for example, happy to happiness, it's still the same word. It's still happy, but it's just it's happy, but it's different. It's not it is now a noun, as in happiness, instead of an adjective, happy. And then for the example of the inflection is a cat, and cat is still the same word. It's still the same cat, but it's just changing the function to tell us that it's not plural. It's not just one cat, but it's more than one cat. It's a plural. Now, part two, derivational and inflectional morpheme. This is where we will see a bunch of case study, 5 case studies, and answer the questions asked after it. Uh, so for the case study one, during an interview, a non-native speaker says, "I unlike going to crowded places, but my friend likes them." So for the first question, identify all morphemes in a sentence. So for the first one is the word unlike, with the root word of like, with the added morpheme un as the prefix, and then going with the root word the root word of go, with the added morpheme ing, and then also crowded, with the root word of crowd, with also the morpheme of ed or ed. And then the next is places, with the root word of place, and then the morpheme of s, and then likes, with the root word of like, and the morpheme of s. Now, second question is to classify each as free or bound morphemes. So for the free morphemes that it can stand alone as a word is first I, like, go, to, crowd, place, but, my, friend, and them. For the bound morphemes that cannot stand alone is the prefix or suffix, such as an, ing, the ed, and the s. Okay. For the next question, explain how prefix an and suffix as modify meaning and grammatical function. Okay, so for the the derivation of fix on, uh, the meaning is it negates or reverses the root lexical meaning. With the case study before, the word of unlike, it is the negative form of like. So it means not liking or dissimilar to. So for the grammatical effect, often derivational, it can change semantics and sometimes word class. Happy to unhappy is equals adjective. Adjective, but polarity change. In other cases, derivation can change class. Example, use to misuse, it's still verb, but meaning is altered. And in the words unlike, un attaches to an adjective or verb base to yield an adjective or verb with opposite polarity because it changes the lexical meaning. It's because it changes the lexical meaning, it's treated as derivational. Now for the s inflectional suffix, the meaning uh, it means it marks grammatical features, plural on nouns, places, or plural of place, and third person singular present on verbs, like third person singular person of like. And then the grammatical inflectional, it doesn't change the lexical category, like verb, like still a verb. It supplies grammatical information, number, or agreement, rather than creating a new lexical item. Now, for the support using at least two for the supporting sources that uh, support these morphological theories. First one is the distributed morphology. Secondly, word formation is distributed across syntax and morphology. Vocabulary items, exponents like n, s are inserted post-syntactically. There's no single word level lexicon where everything is built from and etc. It is with the author of Hale and Marantz. And then for the second supporting ideas or supporting sources is with the lexicalist or lexical morphology, authored by Tenhaken and Panokova. So the idea is about the classical lexicals framework distinction between word formation, derivation, or compounding happening in lexicon and inflection happening after in syntax or at separate morphological module. Under this view, un is a lexical derivational affix. It builds a new lexical entry, like and unlike, while s is an inflectional affix applied in a later morphological or inflectional cycle to indicate number or agreement. Okay, so we'll move on to case study 2. For this case, the editor confuses these pairs. First one, manage to management. Second, talk into talking. Third is hope to hopeful. And lastly, number 4 is play to play. So for the first task is to identify which morphemes are inflectional and which are derivational. So for the first one, the word manage to management. So manage is the root word or the root verb plus the derivational suffix of month becomes the noun of management. So because this change it from the verb into a noun, it is a derivational. And then for the number 2, the word talk into talking. So the root word is talk, which is a verb with the added suffix of ing. Now, so there's actually two possible analysis depending on context. So as a progressive or a participle, he is talking. Ing is an inflectional because it only changes as a verbal aspect or a participle inflection. But as a gerund, nominalization, talking is fun. It sorry about that. Ing is derivational because a verb becomes a noun in this specific case. So the ing in this case, as in the talking, can be inflectional derivational. But in the depending on the context of the sentence, but because there's only this word of talk and talking, uh, these two is the possible outcome of the answer. And then for the number three is the word hope to hopeful. So hope is the verb or noun with the added suffix of full changes it changes the word into an adjective into the word hopeful. So therefore, that the word hopeful is a derivational morpheme. So the full in this context is a derivational morpheme. And the last one is the word play into play with the root word is a verb, the word play with the added suffix of ed. It changed the word into a past tense or past participle, which makes this an inflectional since it doesn't change the meaning. It just changes it into a past form. Okay, and then the test two. The second test is explain differences in meaning, grammatical function, and word class change. So for derivational acquisitions, men are full sometimes ing when nominalizing, create new lexical items, often change word class, verb into noun or verb into adjective, and then change lexical semantics. Manage, verb to administer, management, and noun uh, to a noun of the act, office, or field. And then derivational morphemes often produce entries that can have independent syntactic distribution and selectional properties. And for the affixional affixes, ed, sometimes ing or s, it modifies grammatical features of an existing lexical item, such as tense, expect, aspect, number, and agreement, without creating a new lexical item. It does not change word class. For example, play as a verb, changing into played, it's still a verb form, only in past tense. And then the last one is the inflectional forms appear in paradigms, sets of forms, or of a lexeme rather than creating separate dictionary lemmas. Okay, so for the third test is to show the derivational sequence using the three structures. So in here, we'll explain it briefly. So for the first manage to management, of course, it, it creates from the verb of manage with the suffix of ant. And the next one is the word talking with the root word of talk with the suffix of ing. And then the third one is hopeful with the word adjective, hopeful, that has the root word of hope that can be verb or noun with the added suffix of full. And then also the last one, play, with the verb, the root word of play as a verb with the suffix ed. And then for the task 4, justify with morphological principles from two authoritative sources. The first one by the author of G. Buji. They discuss the classical morphological distinction between inflection and derivation. Inflection is concerned with the internal paradigm of word, its grammatical form, whereas derivation is concerned with word formation, creating new lexeme. And then also, and then the second one is by Hespelmath, uh, which discusses that inflection marks grammatical categories like tense, number, or case, and does not create new lexemes. Derivation forms new words of lexemes by adding affixes that changes meaning or word class. And for the case study 3, it is the case is the student claims that went is the past tense of go because of the ed rule. Now, for the first test, why when cannot be explained through regular morphological rules. So the regular past tense rule in English is add ed. For example, in the word of walk, it becomes walked as for the past tense. Went is not derived by adding ed to go. Historically, when is not phonologically derived from go plus ed, which would be go plus goat will be the regular form if that's the case. Instead, went historically came from a different verb, which is wend. Uh, that came from the Old English of wenden or Germanic cognates, and replaced the original past form of go. The modern result is that go when is a suppletive paradigm. The past form is a form of etymologically unrelated stem, because when lacks the regular morphological marker and is not predictable by regular inflectional rules, it cannot be counted by the simple ed rule. Now for the second test, define suppletion and give at least two other examples in English. So suppletion is a linguistic phenomenon where an inflected form of a word is derived from an entirely different, unrelated word rather than following regular inflection rules. For example, the word go became went is the past is a past the verb is a past is suppletive. And then for the word of good, better, and best, comparative, superlative, better or best are suppletive relative to good. And for the third task, how superlative forms are represented in mental lexicon. So the morphological system consults paradigm for inflected forms. Suppletion is captured by assigning the irregular forms to the appropriate cells of the paradigm. Right? In distributed morphology, suppletive forms are counted to vocabulary insertion or like realization. The same morphosyntactic feature, pass or go, are realized by an alternative vocabulary items when rather than the regular realization, go percent. So for the theoretical evidence from the literature, by Oliviera Bonami and Giles Boy. They argue that although suppletive forms are highly regular on the surface, they are not entirely random. They follow patterns of dependency within paradigms. And then the other evidence is by Pavel Chaha, argues against the assumption that suppletion can only occur at the word level. He provides an argument that analyzing suppletion in terms of morpheme ordering can yield a unified theory of morphology covering both suppletion and irregular alternation. Moving on to the case study 4. In this case, the sudden essay contains the word of greenhouse effect, and then blackboard, and then smartphone, and then pickpocket. Decompose each word into morphemes for the test. For the first test, the word greenhouse effect is the word green plus house, and then effect. And then for the blackboard, it is black and plus board. For the word smartphone, it is smartphone plus phone, and the word pickpocket is pick plus pocket. Now, second test, identify endocentric versus exocentric compounds. So for the word greenhouse, it is endocentric because it is a type of house. With the root of house, it is a type of house which is a greenhouse. And then for the second one is a blackboard, which is an endocentric again. Reason because it is a type of board. It is a blackboard. And then for the next one, smartphone, it is an endocentric because it is a type of phone, a smartphone, a smartphone. And lastly, it is pickpocket. It is an exocentric because it's not a type of pocket, but pickpocket is a word for a person who steals, as in like a thief. Now, test number 3. How meaning emerges. Does meaning depend on head or modifier? In endocentric compounds, such as blackboard, smartphone, or greenhouse, the head typically determines the semantic type of synthetic category. Blackboard is a type of board. Smartphone is a type of phone. The modifier black, smart, green narrows the and or specifies the head. In exocentric compounds or in pickpocket, meaning doesn't derive straightforwardly from head or modifier. The compound denotes something outside the literal head or modifier combination, an agent, a person who pickpocket. So the relation is more compositional or pragmatic and often requires world knowledge or derivational interpretation. Stress pattern affects interpretation. English compounds often have primary stress on first element. When the word is a compound noun, versus stress on the second element. When a phrase is a phrase, such as adjective plus noun phrase. For example, blackboard, a compound noun, stress on black, which is a single selectional item, equals black plus board, one concept, the item used for writing. Meanwhile, blackboard, which is an adjective plus noun phrase, it says more like on a board, black board. If someone is contrasting the color of a board that is black as opposite to white or any other colors. So such difference signals whether the string is lexicalized compound or a phrase. This is a cue to endocentric versus synthetic composition. Similarly, greenhouse as a lexicalized compound versus greenhouse, a house that is green, have different stress and meanings. Stress is thus phonologically signpost for morphological or synthetic constituency and helps disambiguate compound versus phrase readings. Now, use at least two theoretical perspectives to explain your reasoning. So first one, by Kaidarova and Faizidinova. They argued that compounds may vary not just by how they are formed, closed, hyphenate, or open, but importantly by their semantic headedness, endocentric, exocentric, copulative, and appositional. And then by Aquara and Okere, they emphasize that endocentric compounds are head internal and their meaning is semantically a subtype of head. Example, greenhouse, a type of house. Meanwhile, exocentric compounds, the headless semantics. The compound does not designate the subtype of either constituent. For example, the pickpocket is a person who picks pocket. Now, for case study 5, analyze the word unbelievableness. So for the first test, identify and classify each morpheme, free or bound, inflectional or derivational. So with the breakdown of the word with the word of belief, able, and ness. So with for the bound prefix of it is derivational, and it is a negation or a reversers attached to adjective or adjective stems. And the root word of belief is a free morpheme, or it is a verb root. Though unbelievable, it functions as the base stative lexical if we use the believable combined. So with the bound suffix of able, it is a derivational, a forms adjective meaning able to be something or worthy of something. It attaches to verb roots to yield adjective belief to believable. And then lastly, it is the bound suffix of ness, derivational, and turns adjective into noun of state or quality. Some analysis treatness some analysis treat the suffix of ness as derivational nominalizer, creates abstract nouns. Now, for the next task, illustrate the morphological tree diagram ordering, showing order of affixation. Now, so for the word of unbelievableness, it is with the prefix of the root word of belief, which is a verb, and then the suffix of able, and then the suffix of ness. Now, for the next test, discuss how the derivational and inflectional processes interact to create final word. Now, derivational stacking. Multiple derivational affixes can apply in a sequence. Here, the suffix of able, verb to adjective, creates an adjectival base, unmodifies that adjective, and suffix of ness then nominalizes the adjective. Derivational affixes alter lexical category and creates new lexical entries. For example, of believable to unbelievableness. Order matters. And cannot plausibly attach directly to verb to create unbelief with the same meaning. Able must first create the adjectival phrase base that can be negated. And then lastly, no inflectional morphology is present, but if the noun were pluralized, unbelievablenesses or marked for possession, the affectional affix would apply after derivation. In a lexicalist account, inflection applies after derivational cycles. In distributive morphology, the morphological features would be added in syntax, then vocabulary insertion would realize plural as an inflectional exponent. Now, for the next task is to support explanation using at least two morphological theories by Mark Aronoff. Morphology is an independent component of grammar with its own operation, times inflectional classes, lexical listings. He stresses that some word conformation cannot be reduced to syntax and must be handled in a morphological component. And then the next one by Rochelle Lieber. She discusses criteria to distinguish derivational, change lexical category or meaning, from inflectional affixes. And now morphological trees or representation are constructed in different theories. Now, so that is it for me. Thank you so much for listening. Good afternoon.